Once a complaint comes in, you need to figure out what the actual complaint is. This requires you to identify the actual complaint from the information the complainant gave you. Sometimes it's very apparent, it's very easy to figure out what the complaint is. However, sometimes it's hidden within a larger story. It's not as easy to identify. Your job is to determine the scope of the complaint and who the involved parties are. Sometimes you need to ask follow-up questions. Some things to consider are, is this employee venting or are they making a complaint? Have you seen this type of complaint before, either by this person or someone else? And what is the misconduct that the employee is making a complaint about? Sometimes when you receive a complaint, there's a lot of information that may not seem relevant at the outset, but it's important to be sure you're documenting all of this information because it may become relevant later on as you conduct your investigation. Throughout your career, you may come across many types of complaints, ranging from minor disputes between coworkers to more egregious sexual harassment claims. It's important to determine what type of complaint is being made so you can take the appropriate steps. Let's go through some different examples of the various types of complaints that can come in. This is a pretty straightforward one. Susan is writing a 5-page document. She submitted it to HR. In her document, she says she's being harassed by her supervisor. She says she has a disability, her supervisor knows about it, and she includes specific dates and examples of each incident. Now, even though Susan doesn't specifically say that the harassment is because of her disability, it's still a complaint. It could be because of her disability, it could be because of something else. Either way, there's alleged harassing conduct that needs to be investigated. And it's important to remember here that a complaint may not always be linear. Now, is Susan also asking for an accommodation because of her disability? Is there some sort of interactive process that is being triggered? In this next situation, we will consider whether it matters if the inappropriate conduct was directed at the complainant. Nikita reports she heard Alicia make racially inappropriate comments over the phone while Alicia was taking her meal break. Nikita says it wasn't directed at her and there was no one else in the break room. Even if the inappropriate conduct was not directed at a specific person, it is still inappropriate conduct and needs to be investigated. Here, Alicia was off the clock. She was on her meal break, but she's still on company property. So again, this still needs to be investigated. Now, what if the inappropriate conduct is unintentional? Does that make a difference? Jesse tells you that John keeps using their wrong pronouns, but doesn't think that John is doing it intentionally. In determining whether to investigate, it doesn't matter whether the conduct was intentional. This may be something that will be considered during the investigation, but not at this point. You may look at this complaint and think a simple solution is let's do some additional training, but a complaint still came in and an investigation, no matter how small, should still be completed. What if the alleged wrongdoer is a third party and not an employee? Raquel informs you that one of the delivery drivers for a longtime vendor made sexually inappropriate remarks towards her and another employee. Sometimes the alleged harasser may not be an employee, but employers can still be liable for third-party actions and should still take these complaints seriously. This alleged incident here did happen with a third party, but it involves an employee and on company premises. So you should still investigate. And finally, does it matter if it occurred on company premises? Hillary tells you that while at an employer-sponsored happy hour, Mark kept trying to touch her inappropriately and she felt uncomfortable. Employers may be responsible for incidents that occur at company-sponsored events, regardless of whether it is during business hours or on the company's premises. Here, this was an employee-sponsored happy hour. You need to investigate. Now that you've figured out you have a complaint, you need to determine who is going to conduct the investigation. This will depend on the type of complaint, the complainant, and the alleged wrongdoer. Depending on your role, you may be the best person to conduct the investigation. However, if you're involved or the alleged wrongdoer has the supervisor authority over you, it may be best to select someone else. There are key characteristics you want to look for when you're selecting your investigator. Someone who is independent, informed, trained, and comfortable. So the investigator must be independent, meaning they're not connected to the allegation, they're unbiased, and they're perceived to be unbiased. The investigator must be informed, not only with the law of California in investigations and the alleged misconduct, but also with the relevant company policies. The investigator also should be trained and have experience on how to handle complaints in the workplace. And finally, you want an investigator that the complainant, the alleged wrongdoer, and the witnesses would be comfortable speaking with. Sometimes you may need more than one investigator. Now, finally, when do I need to turn for outside help? There's no legal requirement to hire an outside investigator, but as discussed above, not all investigations can effectively be handled internally. For example, if the alleged wrongdoer is the president, the CEO, the human resources director of the company, you may want to consider hiring an outside attorney or outside resources to handle the investigation. You may want to consider hiring an outside investigator, consultant, or attorney if it's going to be a large investigation, if there'll be a lot of documents, a lot of witnesses, or if the complaint is a very sensitive issue. A best practice is if you have been served with a lawsuit or a governmental agency, such as the California Rights Department, formerly known as the DFEH, or the EEOC, has opened an investigation, it's time to hire outside counsel.